I'm so glad to see Ethan is no longer worried and losing sleep. That's really good.
I guess I was
Oh,
the only one on the last one.
seriously, that's such a nice bit of news, and welcome again to all of you. It's been a steady trajectory to watch those declining worries and increased hopefulness, and I do think it's a testament to the learning that's going on and to the adaptability that is the heart of entrepreneurship. And it's certainly as good a way to introduce our speaker today as there could be. First, just a couple quick announcements. Obviously, I want to thank Julie and Carlene and Ethan for helping. I want to thank New Hope Network, the Januzzi Group, Bank of America, and Whipstitch for Capital for helping to put on these webinars, and the Hirschberg Entrepreneurship Institute, May 7th and 8th. I just remind you, particularly if you've been attending, but also for those who might be new today, our mission at HEI is just very simply, it's to help your enterprise grow. We're not exclusive to natural foods or products. We take all comers. Our goal is to share wisdom that frankly, many of us who are presenting to you wish we had available to us, or perhaps did have available. I can tell you the speaker today is one of the people who helped me in my early days, if only just by modeling the kind of mission, soulful, larger purpose that has been the heart of everything I've ever done. I remind you the Institute is May 7th and 8th. We are packing it in. We have now even more investors. I'll go over the agenda when we're done, but I want to remind all of you at $50, honestly, and nobody makes money on that. It's just a nonprofit. It goes to the cost, but I don't know how you can afford not to do this, even to drop in, because the amount of talent and the fascinating cases that we've got, I know are going to give you lessons that you need to take to heart. And particularly right now during COVID and the sort of gray, all the great questions of what's ahead. I think it's a really well-timed institute. The second day, as I said, is all pitching. We have 14 really interesting and diverse cases, and we have, I have to say, a stunning gathering of investors ranging from micro, $50,000 angel investments up to, $5 to $10 million investments. So I hope you'll register and sign up for the 7th and 8th. Quickly, just to say, in case you're not here at the end, Tuesday we have an old colleague of Drake's and mine, Myra Goodman from Earthbound, co-founder with her husband Drew of Earthbound Farms, will be with us. Myra's been she's just a great storyteller, and if you have a chance before, Google and watch her 8-minute TEDx talk on "There is no such thing as big organic." It is a riveting classic one. On Wednesday we have the CEO of Independent Natural Food Retailers Association, the head of purchasing for the National Co-op Grocers, Ben Mand. By the way, that was Pat Sheridan first. And then Katie Paul from KeHE, who will be talking to us. And I know that one will be very well attended because, as with UNFI, many of us are really dealing with the bottlenecks and wanting to understand the picture from the retailers and the wholesalers side. So join us for that. And then on Thursday, we have another special treat, Sonal Shah, who was one of President Obama's close working colleagues, head of the Office of Innovation and Social Engagement in the Obama White House, and then most recently, Pete Buttigieg's policy director. But Sonal is an entrepreneur in her own right, an economist. She's worked at the nexus of banking and government and done a lot of very interesting bottom of the pyramid investing and support in this country and abroad. So you'll want to hear her. We do have a May schedule now. We have some absolutely, again, awesome speakers. You've all asked us to continue, and we will, and we'll share that with you at the very end, because now I want to get to my friend and colleague. And let me just say simply, Drake, I mentioned this earlier. Drake got into this space earlier than I did. As I say, and as you'll hear, brought with him a deep sense of mission and purpose that continues to this day. And he's been such an inspiration for me. I was in the nonprofit world doing ecological ag, organic ag, when Drake was starting in business. And I thought business was the place that values go to die. And he was one of the people who showed me, not only does it not have to, but actually you can really drive values there. And he's been a model all along of a high integrity, mission driven, but also absolutely elegant brand with a true preventative healthcare brand. And then he's also been a model of passing over the reins graciously and gracefully, and helping to mentor and grow the company even further, all the while mentoring lots and lots of entrepreneurs who've come through. So I can't say enough, but because I want to hear from him, I will stop right there and welcome you. Welcome, Drake Sadler.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. It's a real pleasure and honor to participate and to contribute. I want to start with COVID. So everybody's got masks, right? Everybody's using their masks. So what most people don't know about me is that I'm actually much more interested in textiles than I am plants. I'm an absolute textile junkie. And the interesting thing is I get to travel all over the world to these remote cultures, and I bring back looms and suitcases and boxes full of cloth and rolls of beautiful tapestry, and I just have it stored. I just love touching it and hanging out with it. And so when this COVID thing happened and people started talking about making masks, I went to my textile stash and came up with some really nice Guatemalan indigenous. I love this Guatemalan material because it's so electric. You know, the Guatemalan people, their design, the indigenous design. And the inside of the mask is indigo from southern India, cotton indigo. Anyway, we had 300 of these made and everybody's wearing them now outside the company. Inside the company, everybody's wearing these like, really serious, big black masks. But outside the company, everybody's styling now. If you want people to wear masks, make them stylish. So anyway, just a side note, the real Drake Sadler is really a textile fanatic, and plants are kind of secondary. I'm gonna use quite a few slides during the first part of my talk, and then when we get into questions and all of that, there won't be images. So in the first part, you're not going to see me talking so much, simply because I want to kind of enrich this conversation with imagery. And you'll be looking at me plenty afterwards. So that said, how about the first image? Thank you. So, I think everybody would agree that business success and achievement is most often the outcome of, a whole lot of people working together, a lot of people pulling the same sled. And I've been so fortunate to spend the last 5 decades walking and exploring fields and forests and deserts and mountains with the tens of thousands of indigenous people who provide traditional medicinals with the medicinal plants that we use. And so I'd really like to begin this talk, this conversation with, and share their story with you by telling you their story. So next slide. I love those girls. Really since the beginning of human life, people have been dependent upon plants for food and for medicine and for clothing and for shelter. And ethnobotanists today believe that primitive people learned about plants as a result of observing animal behavior in their environment. And so they noticed, for example, that bears would rub up against certain trees with a particular kind of bark and not others. And they figured out that that there was something about that bark that was a repellent to insects and bugs. So primitive people did the same thing because they had the same problem. A lot of people have pets, have cats and dogs, and you've probably noticed at some point your dog or your cat will go out into the yard and you know, eat some lawn or grass and then vomit. They get rid of the contents of their stomach because they've eaten something that didn't agree with them. Instinctually, they know that if they eat that stuff, it will make them feel better. And so we've just been observing the way animals have been doing this for a long time. And it's been, you know, thousands and thousands of years of experimenting with medicinal plants. And this knowledge of our experience of plants has been passed down over the course of time by people, by mostly tribal indigenous people in two different ways. One was an oral tradition and the other was written languages. So beginning with the oral tradition, that's a situation where you have a tribe and you have a medicine woman or a shaman who are sitting with a group of students and teaching them about plants and showing them how to use the plants and taking them into the forest or the jungle and explaining when to harvest and how not to take too much and which parts of the plants to use and things like that, how to bring them back and dry them and prepare them. So that was an oral tradition. This knowledge has been passed down, you know, for thousands and thousands of years in that way. And really, it's only been a few hundred years that we've had written languages here in the Americas. It was only when the Europeans came. Before that, all knowledge was passed down in this kind of oral way. The other tradition was, as I mentioned before, written languages. So early cultures started developing languages very early on, and they started writing down this information and drawing pictures of the plants that they were harvesting, and specifically pictures of the parts of plants that they were using, because not all parts of the plants are the same. And this information then passed down over time in written form. And today, the basis of all medicine systems, all the systems in the world, essentially came out of 7 regions. And these 7 regional medicine cultures are referred to by the World Health Organization as traditional herbal medicine. So the basis of all medicine comes from these 7 schools. And I know you've heard of some of them, like Ayurvedic medicine, or TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. Ayurvedic medicine, of course, came out of India. We have Unani medicine. Those were all the plants and the medicine culture that evolved out of the Middle East. Kampo medicine, which was like the Koreas and Japan, that area. Traditional Tibetan medicine. And then, of course, there was European medicine. And that's the medicine that we are dependent upon here. Most of the medicines we use have a European origin. Let's go to the next slide. So today, 50% of all the world's medicines still contain plants. So I want everybody to think about that for a minute. 50%, half of all the world's medicines still contain plants, or some part of a plant, maybe a compound or an extract of a plant, but contain plant ingredients. The most obvious one would be like all the opiates. We've had this opiate crisis. Well, that all comes from the poppy, of course. And of all those medicinal plants that are used in the world's medicine, 80% of those plants are collected in the wild by indigenous people. So I'm gonna restate all of this, so kind of take this in. 50% of all the world's medicines contain plants. Of those medicinal plants that are used in medicines, 80% of those plants are collected in the wild. And they're collected in the wild by mostly indigenous people who live in really remote communities, because that's where all the wild things grow, right? Now, we tend to think of the things we consume as having been farmed, right? Our foods mostly are farmed. But in the case of medicine, plants, most of the plants in medicine now have been collected in the wild. So, probably got some MBAs on the line, some smart finance people. I'm going to test you here. So I was talking about 80% and 50%. 50% of all the world's medicine contain plants. 80% of those plants are collected in the wild. What is, here's the question, what's 80% to 40%? Oh, I gave the answer away. 80% to 40%, 80% of 50% is 40%. I gave it away twice. Oh, Drake. Anyway, so Ethan, you're laughing.
You gave away the answer, Drake.
Yeah, I know. All right, so 80% of 50% is 40%. So 40% of all the world's medicines, somewhere, some indigenous person has probably had their hands on those materials. Okay, 40%. Now, 90%, one more number, 90% of all those plants are collected by women. And the reason is because women have always been the gatherers. Men were the hunters, women were the gatherers. So Ethan, 90% to 40%?
36.
Thank you. All right. So
I didn't know that I was on for a quiz here.
So 36%. So think about it, a little over 1/3 of all the world's medicines, somewhere at some point in the evolution of that medicine, an indigenous woman collected some of the ingredients that went in to make that medicine. Who knew? Nobody knows. Therein lies the problem. Next slide. These are Roma people from Romania, wild collectors. So these supply communities are economically dependent upon the income that they derive from this wild collection. Unfortunately, they're rarely paid a sustainable wage. And the problem is, it's pretty simple. The problem is that most pharmaceutical or nutritional or herbal companies that are using medicinal plant ingredients are very distant and disconnected from the places and the people where these plant materials come from. Remember, they're buying compounds or extracts. They're not buying raw plants. Let's go to the next slide. Women in Egypt collecting marigolds. These are farmed. This is not wild collected, but they're so colorful. I love this image. So the procurement departments, back to the pharmaceutical companies and the new nutritional companies, their procurement departments, their purchasing folks, they buy these plants, as I mentioned, as compounds and extracts through pretty complex supply chain of traders and sub-traders and processors and wholesalers. And as a result, they don't have any contact, any direct contact with the communities. They just buy stuff online from their suppliers, from these middle companies. And consequently, they don't have any knowledge, have no direct relationship with these supply communities. Let's look at another slide. Oh, I don't know how that got in there. Bitter orange peel, that's what that is. It's orange peel. It's actually wild collected from these small little orange trees in Paraguay. And the peel is very bitter. It's quite medicinal if you know about the value of bitters. So that's that image. This is also a fair wild collected ingredient that we purchase a lot, maybe 100 tons or something. You know, even if herbs are certified organic or fair trade or fair wild. By the way, fair trade, as you probably all know, is the certification for ingredients that are farmed, and fair wild is the certification for ingredients that are collected, like mushrooms or truffles or certain fruits, and certainly herbs and barks and seeds and things like that. So, but even with fair certification, it doesn't mean that these communities have a lasting, sustainable benefit from this work. They get a premium for the materials above market price, but that premium doesn't necessarily equate to sustainable communities and sustainable futures. And therein lies the real problem. We've got these huge, we've got this huge demand for ingredients, and most of the folks who are buying these things have no idea what the status of the supply chain is or how much risk there is in it. So these communities and the industry at large are incredibly at risk, and nobody in a position to do anything about it really knows much about that. And that's where traditional medicinals enters the picture. Let's go to the next slide. Psyllium farmer in Gujarat, India, on the Pakistan border. Anyway, that's where traditional medicinals comes in. We set ourselves out to be the thought leader around sustainable collection and cultivation of medicinal plants, and I'll cover that now. But I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the company. This is in the early 70s, and there was this beautiful young woman named Rosemary Gladstar, fourth generation herbalist from Armenia. Her great-grandmother was an herbalist, her grandmother, her mother. They were all Seventh-day Adventists. They lived very healthy. They lived off the land. They were into natural healing, and Rosemary was raised with all of this, and she was also self-taught. If any of you know Rosemary today, you may be aware that she's really considered the kind of the godmother of modern herbalism. She's had an incredibly prolific career, and she's just a wonderful, wonderful woman and best friend. Anyway, Rosemary, I was walking in the woods one day and I met Rosemary, literally walking in the woods. And in those days, I worked for the Office of Economic Opportunity, which was started by President Kennedy, Sergeant Shriver. And I worked in Northern California setting up Head Start schools and family planning clinics and food banks and co-ops and things like that. So I was out of college, a community development specialist. And And together, there isn't enough time to really go into the whole history, but together we founded Traditional Medicinals, and we did so with a dual purpose. The first purpose was around herbal education. Rosemary was only willing to commercialize these formulas that she had. And by the way, many of those formulas, her original formulas, are the most popular formulas still today. Throat Coat, Smooth Move, Mother's Milk, those were all some of her original formulas. She was only willing to allow those formulas to be sold and commercialized if we dedicated the company and back then its packaging to use as vehicles to educate people about herbalism. Rosemary was an educator, and she was really only up for business if it served herbal education. And I was interested, in community development work, and I saw right away that, these supply communities were horribly impoverished. And this, I realized at that moment, okay, I've been called to do this work. This is a wonderful opportunity. So the dual purpose was herbal education and community development. And, in the early 70s, there was really no talk about regenerative agriculture. Next slide. She's a nettle collector in Bosnia. I wish we could see her hands because her hands are almost black from collecting nettle, stinging nettle. Anyway, in those early days in the 70s, there was no talk about organic certification or regenerative agriculture or conscious capitalism or any of this stuff. And our business concept was really pretty simple. We set out to make efficacious herbal medicines using the tea bag as a delivery system, which was pretty unique at the time. And we were both committed to using business and creating a business for social change. We were practicing Buddhists, studying right livelihood and right thinking, right speaking and all of that. So right business seemed to make sense. Next slide. Yeah, so in retrospect, looking back on this journey of purpose, I'm really quite pleased with what we've accomplished with respect to herbal education. Our boxes, our products are in millions of households. People drink millions of cups of tea a day. Every few minutes, someone opens another bag, they open the box, they read the box, they're acquiring knowledge. And of course, now we have so many new, interesting, compelling platforms that we can educate from. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job of educating North American consumers about herbal education, millions of them, literally. And we've also invested millions of dollars in our supply communities. Those investments normally take the form of water and food security, health and hygiene, education and training, economic development, women's empowerment. This slide that you see here is a group of illiterate women in Rajasthan, India, on the Pakistan border in the largest desert of the world. They were never allowed to go outside their home until we came. And we made agreements with their husbands, the farmers, and said, we're going to buy your crops. We're going to teach you how to grow it. We're going to get it certified organic. We're going to pay you a premium. And here's the kicker. You've got to let your daughters go to school, and you've got to allow your wives to come out of your homes and meet with each other with other women. By the way, the woman second to the right, that's my wife, Naoma. She works in Rajasthan a lot with an organization called Women Serve. If you want to see her work, womenserve.org. Little plug for the family. So women's empowerment, of course, is a huge initiative when you think about it, that 90% of all the wild collection is done by women. It's absolutely essential to the future of our business to have strong groups of women collectors who are becoming educated and have a voice in their communities and their households and are healthy and all of that.
Drake,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. We have about 5 before we have to go to Q&A. So I
Yep.
think it'd be wonderful to get to the sort of hurdles part of the story. This is magnetizing, but I think that's what people are eager to hear.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
So, well, the real challenge here, of course, for us is recognizing that these supply chains are at risk, recognizing that, seeing that, and also being very aware that we just represent like this much of the business of plant medicine in the world. Traditional medicinal is just a minute amount. It's all the pharmaceutical companies and the large nutraceutical companies that are using these plants. And the challenge for us has been how to scale the growth of the company and also to scale social impact and to develop models that we can use to demonstrate that impact to the industry. Our real goal is to reinvent the industry of plant medicine from the ground up. So we've kind of moved from this purpose of helping supply chains to challenging industry and providing industry with thought leadership around how to reinvent this industry of plant medicine before it goes away. That is the essential challenge that's before us. And we don't by any means have it figured out, but we certainly are making an impact and people are paying attention, and we're able to demonstrate economically and socially why that makes good sense.
Can I just ask, I know I don't want to interrupt the flow, but I want to also pick up on that particular point because it seems to me that, and I think the audience will relate to this because everybody's competing with somebody big. Isn't part of your challenge, in fact, to demonstrate the authenticity, to show how distinct you are from others who are not going to the depths you are? Isn't that part of the problem?
No, I think our goal in this is to demonstrate economic viability, to actually show large producers how, if they do agricultural training, for example, if they spend money in agricultural training, they educate farmers, they can improve the level of active ingredients in the plants, which equates to purchasing less materials and less throughput through their expensive extraction equipment. The money to make extracts and compounds from drugs is not the raw material. It's the processing of those bulks of materials through very sophisticated equipment. And if you can reduce that by half because you've taught farmers how to grow and harvest and you like that, and you've got double the active ingredients in a plant, well, you've just saved yourself a tremendous amount of money.
Mm-hmm. And
then you can really afford also to pay the farmers a premium, and they don't have to grow as much. They can grow more food crops and other things.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer? That's
Yeah.
one part of it. That's one part of the answer. I guess the other part is that, thank God, there is this emerging generations of younger consumers who really care about where things come from and how people are being treated, and those stories are pretty rich and empowering for consumers, and they want more of that. They want to be part of that. And so in that way, we're able to share these stories about these communities and the work in the communities, not from an economic perspective, but from a social perspective. And that's really resonate, of course, with consumers today.
Drake, I'm curious how you guys navigated, theoretically, or I assume sacrificing some of your bottom line when you were at, a much smaller size than you are now, during those early times for the mission, just because, understanding the audience on here, I think most of the companies and people listening have some sort of mission involved that, cost them more money to operate. And so when you're $1, $2, $3, $4 million, that's a lot different than demonstrating the change that you guys can now. So at that smaller size, how did you guys navigate that?
Well, I think it's always a balance between growth and purpose. They should not be at odds with each other. Growth at the expense of purpose is like an invasive weed. It just takes over. So caution with growth. It's not all just about growth. What gets interesting is how do we grow and scale purposeful impact? I think that's where it gets interesting. And my experience, speaking from 5 decades, is if you really focus on purpose, everything else comes. The rest comes. Of course, you have to have good people and you have to make, smart decisions and all of that, informed decisions. But if you are guided by purpose and you operate with integrity and transparency, success follows.
And do you feel that naturally?
This was never about size for us. It was never about the money. It was none of that. And that all came. That all just showed up too.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of translating that authenticity to the consumer, do you feel like that just naturally comes out, or has Traditional Medicinals taken any really intentional methods of education or transparency with their consumers to make sure that they're understanding the difference?
Well, with respect to industry really wants to see measurables. So we have to demonstrate to industry that if you invest $1 here, you're going to get back $1.20. So it's a little different than the consumer side. On the consumer side, we, of course, just like everybody else, we track all our social media and what people are spending time on and how they're migrating from topic to topic. I got to tell you, the company Cat gets more attention than the most amazing educational work that we do on all of our social media platforms. People love pets, and that company Cat is extremely popular. But to answer your question, I'm really excited about all these forms of a communication, and it behooves us to really understand them and learn how to use them properly, and to insist upon standards and how they're being used appropriately and all of that.
Drake, we're just checking in here. We need to dive into the Q&A. But are there any more slides that you were dying to show? Because I
can't even remember what's there. Let's see what's next.
All right, why don't you just click through them, Carlene, real fast. And then I want to ask,
Oh yeah, go back.
Okay.
Go back. Wait a minute. We had pandas up there for a moment.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's not forget animal welfare. So the work that we all do, whether it's farmed or collected raw materials, has a big impact on all the species, and we need to really be paying attention about that. And
So I want to press you on something, and I think it goes to the heart of what you're saying. I think you're saying it because of all your experience and confidence, but I think a lot of other people here are struggling with this. So what you say is, if you have the mission, the rest comes, and it's never been about money. But obviously, you had an expensive supply chain. You had the cost of doing things authentically, I'm sure, meant that your gross margin was much less than your competitors, and I'm sure you had less money than a lot of your competitors. So I think what people are wanting to know, and by the way, I think this is extremely timely right now, because during COVID, a big theme through this whole month has been, people are looking for authenticity. They're looking for authentic health. They're looking for companies they can trust. Speak more from the heart right now than, selling, right? But can you give a kind of a couple of like nitty-gritty summaries of just how did you weather all that? Like, how did you? Part of the whole thing about it all works out is that, of course, investment capital can flow your way. Did you need much? There had to be times when you were way out ahead of the investment community. So I think just a couple of hints along those lines, because I'm assuming those obstacles were all there for you.
Sure. Let's see. Well, in terms of challenges to the organization along the way, I'm pretty ruthless when it comes to decision-making around protecting what I believe to be the sacred nature of the organization. And, it's like Greenpeace. If Greenpeace said to everybody, "Hey, you know what? We don't have the capital. We're not gonna be able to make it here. We're running short of money. We got two options. We can keep you all employed for another 6 months and hope things change, or we can let 90% of you go and continue to operate the organization and get through this." Well, anybody at Greenpeace would stand up and walk out the door immediately. They're all about the purpose and mission. And that's how I feel about it. There have been several very difficult times in the company's history when I had to be very decisive about difficult decisions that impacted employees and stakeholders. And
could you give one example, like a really acute moment?
Probably everybody's heard of this plant called stevia. It's kind of sweet. So back in the day, in the 80s, I think it was, this goes to the issue of competitors also. We were talking about competitors, and not everybody plays by the same rules. So in the 80s, Celestial Seasonings was the source of stevia in the United States. If you wanted to buy stevia, you bought it through Celestial Seasonings.
Mm-hmm.
And, we bought a few herbs from them in those days. So we bought all of our stevia. Food and Drug Administration decided to make stevia illegal and to embargo it. And so they went to Celestial because they knew they had it. It was on their boxes. And they said, "Hey, we're here to embargo your products." And so the leadership at Celestial Seasonings, this was not Mo Siegel, by the way, this was later. The leadership then at Celestial Seasonings cut a deal with FDA to provide FDA with all the customer names for stevia, everybody they were selling it to. And within a week, FDA went and embargoed all these people's warehouses, mostly tea companies, including ours. And in one day, at the middle of January, at peak of season, 90% of all of our inventory was embargoed.
Wow.
And we never sold it. We were never able to sell it. And it was catastrophic. The only tea company that survived during that time was celestial seasonings. Took about a year before we learned about all of that, how that had happened through the Freedom of Information Act. The point is, we went from about 80 staff people, I think, to 7 or 8.
Wow.
We had to. It was the only way to protect the company. We had debt service, we had rent, we had everything. And it was awful. That was horrible. But it was the only way to survive. I didn't take a salary for a couple of years, and we were just hanging on by a thread. So there have been a few times like that. I mistakenly violated my debt covenant with the bank, and my friends at Wells Fargo stepped in and locked the doors for almost a year. So it was another one of those situations when I just had to really, dial things down and step way back. And so those things happen.
So having the ability, what got you through, having the ability to tighten the belt, cut way back, and then getting how you got back on your feet in each case. Obviously, you didn't use stevia the first time. How'd you come out of it? How'd you start growing again?
Well, I mean, on the product side, we had to reformulate, purchase new packaging, and
Okay.
just making new product.
Okay. Save the core mission. Yeah, I got it.
Start hiring people back slowly as we could bring them back. And
Okay.
but it was
Got it.
very, very difficult.
And Drake,
So-
moving into what's going on right now, can we move into a little bit of audience Q&A?
Yes, definitely.
Because the first one that I wanted to get to was in current day, how traditional medicinal supply chain is being impacted during this time. That's a question from Suman.
Well, not so much at the community level, because those folks tend to be pretty remote. And the risk there is that many of them are uneducated and unaware of the risk of the virus. So one of the things that concerns me deeply is what's going to happen when the virus gets to all indigenous communities, whether it's the Amazon or Eastern Europe. What's going to happen when it finally finds its way there? In terms of the supply chain after the communities, I think the biggest impact we're seeing at the moment has to do with freight. Moving things around has become much more complicated. The raw materials are there because those raw materials have been processed already. They've been purchased last year. The harvest was in the summer and spring. So the raw materials are there. It's a matter of getting them from place to place, which has been challenging.
Especially international sourcing, which is
and
most
everything
of
we
yours.
do is international. We buy 160 herbs from 40 countries. So it's complicated.
Yeah. All right, well, let's, this is sort of about a larger crisis, but Susan asked, how worried are you about climate change and reduction in harvest of world medicine?
I'm extremely worried about it. It's climate. I'm as worried for those of us who are dependent upon the medicines as I am for the people that live in those indigenous communities. Because
and have you seen any impacts so far?
Absolutely. There's not one community we work in where there isn't an impact. I mean, I was walking in a desert just this year where they get 2 inches of rain a year. 2 inches, that's all they get. And this is in Pakistan. And through the interpreter, the farmer started explaining to me that this tremendous amount of rain had come and that the earth had moved. And he was talking about the earth moving, and we really couldn't understand. I was like, earthquake or what? And then it was erosion, right? And they had never known erosion. They didn't even have a word for erosion because there had never been that kind of volume of water, and it had completely ruined their crops. Everything had washed away. All the topsoil was gone. So it's serious everywhere. Very serious.
Yeah. So This one, we're kind of bouncing all over the place, but navigating the Q&A, there's some big picture and specific stuff. But so Ramon wanted to know if you guys have seen an increase in consumption of your immunity boosting infusions during this time.
Only about 400%.
I was gonna say I could probably answer that one for you.
We have every customer on allocation.
Yeah.
And we're running 24/7, producing everything we can. And we're using materials that we had planned to produce, you know, in the summer and next fall. We're using them now.
And you all, I mean, you cover such a wide range of functions. Are you noticing any other sort of macro consumer trends? I think immunity, people consuming more immunity products, okay, we can all figure that one out. But is there anything else that you're noticing from sort of a high level?
All the ships have risen. All
Yeah.
the products are seeing a very nice lift as a result. And maybe that's because people thought they were going to be home and they wouldn't be able to get access to things, so they bought more. But the consumer trends we watch weekly, we get a weekly report on consumer purchasing, and it just continues. So I'm sure there will be some leveling off. We are a little bit more of a seasonal business, but so far it hasn't.
And along those lines, this isn't in the Q&A, but I was curious about, as a brand that, you know, I think a lot of us exist primarily in the natural channel. I could be wrong, but I think Walmart is Walmart your biggest retail customer right now, or it's close to it?
Amazon and Whole Foods combined are the largest entity, but Walmart is the largest retailer.
And so from, again, sort of a 30,000 foot view, is there anything that you can give people feedback on in terms of operating in those two different channels with two very different customers, either in terms of actually, do you differentiate any product sets, or is it just the same philosophy applies across everywhere?
Oh, you know, I'm pretty removed from the sales strategy and all of that. Pricing parity, of course, is always important. Very, very important. You know, with customers, the very large customers, you have to be really careful about out of stocks, because if you have significant out of stocks, like at this time, they may very well charge you a fee for the lost revenue or earnings that they've incurred as a result of your out of stocks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Just going to keep it rolling with some other questions coming in here. Ramon also asked, can you elaborate on prevention, and in parentheses, microbiome and better nutrition versus healing drugs?
Versus healing.
And I guess where your products come into play there.
Well, we're over-the-counter medicines. We make laxatives, decongestants, cold medicines, lactagogues, you know, lactation products. Those products are specifically for non-serious conditions. It just goes back in time. As I said, we're standing on the shoulders of, you know, thousands and millions of people have been fooling around with plants and medicine all this time. I don't really even know how to answer the question, so I apologize.
No, it's okay. I think, well, this one's sort of related. I guess, thinking about the brand as a whole right now, again, you said you're sort of removed from the day to day, but watching the entire evolution of the brand at this point, is there anything left to accomplish, or what do you see as sort of the future of the brand given the platform that it's created? And then I'll just ask another more specific one that Trevor asked. What do you desire for the customer to take away from an experience with the brand, whether it's their first time or they've been a long time consumer?
Well, the answer to the first question is most people, we have two issues. One is most people know the products more than they know the brand. So a lot more people are familiar with Breathe Easy or Throat Coat or Smooth Move than they are traditional medicinals. If I tell people I'm on the plane and they say, what do you do? I say, well, I work for this company called Traditional Medicinals. It's a mouthful. They're like, what? And then I said, well, we make, like Smooth Move. And then they always get a little bit of a somewhat embarrassed look. And they're like, oh, yeah, I know about Smooth Move. So we have a little bit of an issue there that we're always working on, which is to elevate the brand.
And is that because you have so effectively branded the function of the products?
Yeah, and because they are sold in different channels in different ways. So, for example, Smooth Move sell a lot of Smooth Move in drugstores in the laxative set.
Yeah.
And then let's see, the other part of that question is that in order for us to move outside of tea, I think only 25% or something of the American public even drink tea. So in order for us to really be a botanical wellness company or a botanical medicine company, we need to be able to migrate outside of tea into other delivery systems.
Yeah,
So,
Peter's asking if you are thinking about bars or other platforms.
Well, we have a Mother's Milk bar already. It's only sold through Amazon.
Okay.
Mother's Milk is the #1 best-selling tea SKU with Amazon. So we make a Mother's Milk nutritional bar because when we queried nursing moms about what their needs were, one of the things was I need a bar for me that helps with lactation. So.
By the way, I can't remember the statistic, but you and I were at a dinner, I don't know, 1 or 2 years ago, and you gave some unbelievable stat. Oh, it was Michael Funk's party, some incredible stat about the amount of Smooth Move that's gone out there. Do you remember what that was? It was a staggering number.
Well, I was kidding Michael about the amount of Smooth Move he had sold.
That's true. Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right.
It was, and we gave him a photograph of himself framed by a toilet seat.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you.
Around the toilet seat, it said 1 billion sold.
Yeah, this is, by the way, for folks who don't know, this is the co-founder of UNFI. So, yeah, sorry. Right, that was it.
Humorous. But we sell about 250 million doses of Smooth Move a year.
Okay. Everyone should just pause on that one for a second. Sorry, Ethan. Go ahead. Keep going.
A lot.
No, I think we were getting into some of the interesting kind of big picture. I mean, the thing that kind of grabbed me when you were talking was just thinking about the business originally as tea was a delivery system for efficacious food. And I think
efficacious plants, not
efficacious plants.
Yeah. Not see us as a food company.
And that could be, but that could take many different forms. And so I think, a lot of us come into our products from many different sides. Some are passionate about the format, and some are coming at it more from a function standpoint. And so that was really just interesting for me to think about as the brand exists now. And then, because you could expand that platform into really almost anything.
Well, not anything. We've done a lot of consumer research around what are the acceptable places we could go? What would be okay for people and what wouldn't with our brand? So that's a really important bit of work to do as for a branding company. Entrepreneurs they get their heads full of wonderful product ideas, but it doesn't always translate to your consumers. You're not always able to effectively leverage your brand by putting some other kind of product out there.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just talk really quickly before we wrap a little bit more about that, because I think it's a sticking point for a lot of entrepreneurs. Like you said, they have all these ideas, and so where you guys make and break those decisions about innovation.
but this maybe answers one of Gary's questions. Back in in the late 80s, the company was completely out of money, and we were growing. There was a lot of demand, and the question was whether or not to take in investment capital. And there was a lot of it starting to show up, and I was opposed to bringing in capital, because I just felt like if people got on the bus with bags of money, they were going to want to get off pretty soon, and we wouldn't be able to pay them, and that would not end up. That would put the company at risk.
Yeah.
So we realized that one of the greatest assets we had was our distribution system and our sales team, but they just didn't have enough products to sell. We had limited products of, breadth of products, and we didn't have the money because we didn't have any money. We didn't have any money for innovation. We couldn't go out and just develop more products. I was in Europe, and I was in a grocery store, and I saw recycled toilet paper on the shelf. And I thought, wow, that's wild. I've never seen that before. And I brought some home with me and brought it to our sales team, and they were like, oh, this doesn't exist. We could sell boatloads of this stuff. So we found a company called Fort Howard in the Midwest that made everything from recycled paper material. And they didn't have any brands of their own. They were all institutional. And we developed two brands. One was called Green Forest, which is in the market today, and Envision. And we launched these two lines of recycled paper products, tissue, toilet paper, paper towels, and it was incredibly successful. It was so successful that within a year we were a paper company. The sales of the paper products exceeded the sales of our plant medicines. And I was really glad that we had not branded those products as Traditional Medicinals paper products, because I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to sell those brands.
Yeah, it could have been TMTP though. That's
yeah. So we sold Envision to United Naturals, and we sold Green Forest to another big paper company. And then shortly thereafter, Seventh Generation came out, and the whole paper thing exploded. We were glad to have gotten out when we did. We made a ton of money, and it helped us get through that hard time. But
it wasn't under it couldn't live under Traditional Medicinals brand.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's neither traditional nor a medicinal.
No.
Drake, there's a couple of very tactical questions I want to quickly get to here. Can you describe your consumer? For Denise is asking.
I suspect it's like our consumer is a lot of the people who are listening in today, from what you've described as the demographic. For the most part, women, better educated, interested in social issues, like to read, kind of like that.
Okay. Somebody else is asking, Shri was asking, your main method of marketing, is it primarily word of mouth on social, or is it the packaging, or are there other channels that just jump out as your most successful?
Oh gosh, well, we buy a lot of media in different forms. It's very complex.
Okay, so it's all over the map. Nothing jumps as the major thing for. And let's see. Somebody was asking about how you're actually paying these local communities, and you of course mentioned the in-kind support, water systems, and so on and so forth. But is there anything more you want to say about how money makes its way to the actual folks doing the harvesting?
Well, in the case of fair certification, the way that works is like fair trade or fair wild. The premium that the end user, that would be us, the premium that we pay for those raw materials, the fair premium, goes back through the supply chain to the communities, and the communities are required to develop democratic decision-making within their communities about how those funds are to be used. And the fair certification folks, whether it's Fair Wild or Fair Trade, one of their tasks is to audit that democratic process that's supposed to occur in communities. So one guy doesn't end up with a tractor and everybody else gets nothing.
Yeah, yeah. How many countries is Traditional in now?
40.
40,
We
okay.
buy from 40 countries. We buy.
Oh, but how about you're on the sales side?
Have no idea.
Okay.
A lot.
There are two questions about.
We have packaging in multiple languages.
Okay. We are about to wrap, but there's a couple that I just would love the answers to. Trevor has the fact that throat coat being in almost every recording studio and green room in the music industry helped to push the brand even further.
Yeah, it's true. We get calls from people like Madonna's road manager. They're somewhere like in the Ukraine. She's going to go on stage tomorrow and she refuses if she doesn't have throat coat. And we're supposed to somehow get throat coat to the Ukraine.
Yeah, yeah.
That stuff happens all the time.
I'll take it. I'll bring it. Okay. Second to last, Smooth Mood. How much credit do you give to its function and how much to its awesome name?
Well, it's very effective. So, efficacy is not an issue with Smooth Move.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not
But did the name? I mean, just for people listening, how much did the name? I mean, you have some amazing names. How much did the name? You feel the name was a big contributor to trial? And
well, most of the younger consumers would not be aware of this, but growing up as a kid, there was this saying that if you wanted to tease somebody, if they did something and they screwed something up, you would say, "Smooth move, X-Lax."
yes, that's true.
Remember that, Gary?
I'm of that gen. Yes.
Yes. So X-Lax, of course, was the leading laxative brand.
Yes.
So when we came up with the name Smooth Move, it was just perfect.
Pretty easy. Yeah.
Years
Good work.
later, Novartis came after us for using it.
Yes.
They didn't get very far, but
great. And finally, Kevin asked something that I do know a little bit about. You've been known to be a very skilled tree climber. Are you still scaling the tall timbers?
it's been a while.
Yes.
But I love tree climbing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
You
Drake.
get 100 feet up in a redwood tree.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you. Listen, I want to try to bring us to a close. I could listen to your stories for hours, and I appreciate them. Let me try to summarize.
But I have one last request.
Go for it.
I want us to see the film. It's 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let me do this.
Talk and then we do it at the end?
Yes, let me do a quick summary. And I won't go through all of the incredible lessons, but basically the key ones that I've taken away are be ruthless about protecting your mission, even if you've got to shrink it back. If you lose your mission, you lose the whole thing. And you are certainly an example of somebody who was not willing to do that. Growth at the expense of purpose is like an invasive weed. I love that one. And if you really focus on purpose, everything else comes. I love to just do whatever you can to stay alive, including scaling all the way back. Those are the keys. I'm conscious of time and I want to get to your video. Carlene, do me a quick favor and flash up the webinar screen. We're going to do 2 quick slides, Drake, and then go to the video. If you can do that, Carlene. Here we go, everybody. Just to remind you really quickly, Myra on Tuesday, another awesome founder. the conversation with KE Infra and NCG on Wednesday, and Sonal. And there's a little sneak peek at May. We have Elliot and Wayne in particular, who've been really, really active with helping smaller companies navigate these times and are seeing some trends. Danny Meyer, I think you all know him to be legendary in the hospitality and Shake Shack world, obviously a world that's been literally shaken. And Jane Miller, the CEO of Lily Sweets, is on, and we'll have others. And again, I just remind you of the Institute, May 7th and 8th. Please, hirshberginstitute.com. All right, let's go to the film.
Hang on 1 minute. I want to just introduce the film.
Go for it. Introduce the film, and we'll wrap with that.
Yeah. You know, there's a wonderful thing about Americans, and that is that we kind of embrace this spirit of volunteerism. A lot of people, you know, work at the PTA, or they coach soccer, or they participate with Girl Scouts, or whatever it is they do. They do environmental projects in their community. That spirit is alive and present in America. It's something about us, and it's different other places. And when you engage the culture in your organization in a way that they feel like they participate in its purpose, and they're contributing to that purpose, something very magical begins to occur. Because now they're getting that at work. They're not only making a good wage and benefits and all that, but there's something deep inside them is being fulfilled. That's absolutely critical.
Let's go to the video. We promised people.
Okay.
Here we go.
Here in Rajasthan, India, struggle often overshadows opportunity, especially when it comes to women and girls. Female literacy rates are very low. Half the girls won't learn to read or write, and only 1% will graduate high school. Schools are too far away, and even if they were allowed to go, girls can walk up to 3 hours a day to attend. Education has simply never been a priority for them. That's why we decided to get involved. To do what's right for these girls. To give them opportunity where there was none before. Change is now in motion.
What happened?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, we weren't seeing the actual video.
All started with this. A bike. Because when she has a bike, she can ride away from illiteracy, from poverty, from hunger, from being forced into a marriage at a very young age. When she has a bike, she can ride towards a future as a teacher, a nurse, a voice for future generations. When she has a bike, she has the power to change the value she has in her community and the value she sees in herself. When she has a bike, she wants just one more thing, a bike for her friend.
Wow, what a great way to go out.
Anybody who wants to see it can go to the company's website.
No, we've loaded it on our. We've now got it linked. So, and there were a whole lot more people on who will see this, and this recording will be available after. Drake, thank you for giving us your time and your wisdom today. Ethan, thank you so much once again, and Carlene and Julie, and we will see you all next Tuesday.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thanks, Drake.
Here, thank you.
Bye.